Honestly, I'm just so excited for autumn because it's not only the season where I get to embrace my full wardrobe, I get to wear jumpers and drink coffee and feel ultimately cozy and blankets, and it's the season where I get to read the most fantasy, horror, and dark academia and really be embraced in people doing the most awful things and the most epic things as well. However, I think the true horror is the amount of unread books that I have on my bookshelf, so we're gonna sort that. Hey cozy besties, it's Joel, and today we're gonna be going through my fall/autumnal TBR. Wow, I wonder why a lot of people think I'm American, considering the fact I'm using so many American words. It's been a while since I've uploaded a video on this channel. I think it's been about 2 months since I've uploaded like a full channel video. I do apologize for that. To go briefly into why I took the summer off of creating content, one, became really obsessed with Baldur's Gate in like August and really wanted to play that game and the campaign. I'm currently in Act 3 right now, which is, it's so good. Chef's kiss. Perfect game if you're a fan of like Dungeons and Dragons and want to get into that. But also, I kind of lost touch with the kind of content that I wanted to create, and so I needed to take a bit of time off to just kind of reflect on not only the kind of content that I want to create going forward, but also the kind of content that I enjoy creating and finding that passion in creating content again. And I think it was more so a thing of me just not worrying necessarily about the numbers and more so enjoying the conversation. So I'm really excited with all the ideas that I've got coming up. I hope you're all doing very well and that you're looking after yourselves. Please grab your beverage of choice and the snack for this video. I've got a nice cup of coffee with me in this pink cloud mug. It just came today. It's really good coffee as well. Ugh. And if you've yet to check me out on any of my other social medias, I would highly recommend you go and do that as well, because I post some extra content that you're not gonna see here. And also, feel free to join the Book Explorers Tavern over on Fable. It's my book club, and this month we're gonna be reading Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. It's a beautiful gothic, and I am just so excited to be reading it with all of you. It's also a free ebook over on Fable as well. I hope to see you over there as well. The link is in the description. And so I have quite a few books that I want to talk to you about today. They're all basically either fantasy, horror, or dark academia books. I kind of wanted to focus on that for the autumn because I feel like the autumn is just the best time to read fantasy. There's something about autumnal colors and leaves and the way that it feels that really invites a sense of intrigue and wonder. Who knows if I'm going to read any of these books? I mean, the very first book that I want to discuss is one that I've been wanting to read since 2020, 2021, and I know a lot of you are already probably guessing what this is going to be, but let's just get this out of the way. So the very first book/series that I want to read in the autumn is Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. This has plagued me for so long in a good way. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, I'll get to it, and then my ADHD kind of makes me forget about it until like I'm reminded of it and then feel the immediate shame of not having read it. And so it's definitely a book that I want to read. I definitely want to catalog my experiences of reading it because I feel like it would be very interesting to do so. But this basically follows Kelsey and Vin, two half-scar orphans who are Mistborn, which are people who possess the magic of allomancy, which is a magic of metals. They ingest metals and get certain abilities. And they assemble a criminal crew to stage an uprising against the Lord Ruler, who has reigned for over 1,000 years. And this series basically ponders the question of what would happen if the prophesized hero had actually failed at defeating the Dark Lord. I'm really excited about it. I've heard so many people just rave about this series, how amazing it is, and I think for an introduction to the Cosmere, I think it would be a very good place to start. And then I'm going off of like one prolific fantasy author to another prolific fantasy author's series, as I do want to read Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb as well. Robin Hobb is one of those authors that, much more than Brandon Sanderson actually, has been recommended to me time and time again. One of my friends literally was speaking to me for a good solid 20 minutes about how amazing Robin Hobb's writing is once. If that didn't convince me, I don't think anything could. I was browsing through Robin Hobb's Goodreads. I think one of her Goodreads posts was about the fact that she was like, yes, I rate books 2 stars. I finished the book. It's good. 2 stars isn't a bad rating. And I'm like, wow, even Robin Hobb has to contend the fact their star ratings are like good. Assassin's Apprentice follows Fitz, who is a royal bastard, and he has a magical link with animals known as the Wit, but he has to forego his old life and adopt a new way of living as he's inducted into the royal household in order to train to become a royal assassin. There's something about that screams conspiracy to me. I think there's more to it that's going on, and just seeing the amount of people who have so many emotions about this series is amazing. And also, actually, Rick Riordan made a review about this book saying basically if Charles Dickens wrote a fantasy novel, it might read something like this: great expectations with swords and sorcery. And anything that Rick Riordan recommends, I will read, because that man, I definitely feel like I'm going to love this series. And I know like Reagan from Peru's Project is about to finish the last Robin Hobb trilogy. I feel like I'm definitely in safe hands with Robin Hobb. The next book then is The Will of the Many by James Islington, who also wrote The Shadow of What Was Lost. And this is basically like an ancient Rome inspired fantasy that a lot of people have likened to Red Rising, even though I haven't read that either, but I just wanted to throw that tidbit in there. And this basically follows the hierarchy, also known as the Canaan Republic, who may rule the world, but they do not know everything. Viz Telemus is a young fugitive who, while seemingly wanting to enter the most prestigious school, is actually there to solve a murder, to search for an ancient weapon, and to uncover secrets that may tear the entire hierarchy apart. And so Viz will have to rise through the academy ranks, smile, and make friends, because if they find out who he is, they will kill him. This is just another book that I've heard so much praise for and so many people like hyping up. There's just something about an ancient Rome inspired fantasy that makes me want to read it even more. It kind of gives that kind of dark academia vibes while not specifically being dark academia, if you get me. Speaking of books that seem dark academia without being dark academia, we then have The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence, which is about magical libraries, and I'm already sold on just that. But this is one of the other books that I've seen a lot of people talk about and really love as well, and so I definitely wanted to get my claws into this. And this basically follows a boy who's trapped within a vast library, which I'm jealous of, and a girl in a tiny settlement where nightmares stalk and no one goes, and the world doesn't know them. But that is about to change. Their stories begin to spiral around one another across worlds and time, a tale of truth and lies and hearts. A tale of which knowledge erodes certainty, and on which, where the pen may be mightier than the sword, blood will be spilled and cities will be burned. And so I'm really excited about this. I'm obsessed with books about books, books about literature, books about mysteries surrounding words, and I always find it to be so intriguing when like people dive into a text. I'm really excited to read it. Even if I just read this for the vibes, I think it's gonna be great. We then have another book that I've been wanting to read for a while, but I am actually gonna read now in the autumn, and that is The Justice of Kings by Richard Swan. And following the Empire of the Wolf simmering with unrest, rebels, heretics, and powerful patricians challenge the power of the imperial throne. Orders of justices such as Sir Conrad von Volt and his protege Helena Sadanka stand in the way of chaos using their sharp minds, arcane magics, and also their sword abilities. However, when the pair uncover a conspiracy that stretches to the top of imperial society, they must both decide whether they'll forego the rules they've sworn to uphold in order to protect the empire. And it's this kind of internal conflict that makes me really excited to read this book, because I am a sucker for external conflict. Like, give me a big bad, but also give me grey characters, morally grey people who must decide like whether they need to be evil in order to actually exact some good. Those kinds of like conflicts I love within a fantasy book, because it shows that no one is good, no one is evil. It's all about the decisions you make in those moments. I know a few people like Reagan have really loved this book, and so I'm excited to read it. And then we have The Bone Ships by R.J. Barker, and this is the Broken Binding edition, which has such stunning stenciled edges and the nakedness. I have never seen such a stunning naked book before until now, and I got this as part of my Broken Binding subscription. But I was also really intrigued by the premise of the book, because basically for generations the 100 Isles have built their ships from ancient dragon bones in order to fight an endless war, and whilst the dragons have disappeared, the battle for supremacy persisted. But now the first dragon has been spotted in centuries, and not only do both sides see it as a chance to shift the balance of power, but whoever catches it will win not only glory but the war. And so I'm really intrigued to see what this is going to be. I mean, the premise doesn't really reveal any of the main characters, so I'm hoping we're going to get some really nice developed characters in this as well. I haven't heard any bad things about this book. I'm really intrigued to read it. Then we got on to two books by the same author that I want to read this autumn, and they're both books that I'm really highly anticipating. One is one that is coming out, and one is one that a lot of people have hyped up to me. And the first book is The Fragile Threads of Power by V.E. Schwab. I loved the Shades of Magic trilogy. I just find the whole concept to be so intriguing, and whilst I wasn't a massive fan of how the last book ended, I was still really excited to see how the story is going to continue in this book. I feel like there is just so much to anticipate with this, and plus the way that V.E. Schwab's writing style has evolved since the Shades of Magic trilogy, I think I am gonna like this one. And this basically takes place 7 years after the ending of A Conjuring of Light, and in White London, a new Antari named Kasika has taken the throne, willing to feed her city with blood, including her own, but religious fervour threatens to drown them entirely. And in Red London, King Raimuresh is threatened by a rising rebellion, one determined to balance the scales of power by raising the throne entirely. But it is a girl with an unusual magic ability that could change the fate of all four Londons entirely. Her name is Tess, and she can either bring them all together or unravel it all entirely. And so I'm really excited to see where this story is going to go. I've heard really good things about it from people who've already read it. I don't know, I just think it's going to be the thing that really brings me back into the Shades of Magic universe. And then following on from the Shades of Magic, I then have Vicious by V.E. Schwab. This one is the kind of dark academia-esque novel that's really going to kick off the next couple of books. And I'm really excited to read this one because I was talking with a friend a couple of months back, and they predicted that this is probably going to be one of my favorite V.E. Schwab books, if not my favorite V.E. Schwab book. book. And so I'm really excited to read it because I enjoy V.E. Schwab's writing a lot, and I think it's going to be really intriguing to see how I feel about this specific book. It is, after all, a tale of ambition, desire, and superpowers. It basically follows Victor and Eli, who started out as college roommates, but then became closer when their academic interests aligned. And it revealed an intriguing possibility that under the right conditions, one could develop supernatural abilities. But when they experiment with this thesis, things go horribly wrong. And so 2 years later, Victor breaks out of prison to go meet with his old friend, but Eli is busy trying to kill every single other person with superpowers. Yeah, and so driven by memories of betrayal and loss, who will be left alive at the end of their plans for revenge? I'm in love with tragedy. I'm in love with revenge tragedies more specifically, and I just find them so enriching and engrossing. I don't know, this feels like a revenge tragedy to me. I think this is going to give what it needs to give, and I think the girlies that get it will get it, and the girlies that don't. It's going to be quite vicious. And hopefully, if this does become my new hyperfixation, God forbid I relive those years on Tumblr. We shall see. We now continue the thing of me needing to catch up on popular books by the fact that the next book is The Atlas 6 by Oliver E. Blake, another popular dark academia book that I haven't read yet, but will be reading this autumn. I am hoping to do some kind of like dark academia video because I have a thesis about the way publishing and people in general categorize dark academia that doesn't sit well with me, and I don't actually know how I'm going to do this video yet. It's something that I feel quite passionately about, so it's gonna be chaotic. I want to read The Atlas 6 because, again, it's one of the dark academia novels that's been hyped so much and so thoroughly that literally, like, I can't go like 5 posts on TikTok without being recommended The Atlas 6. That's probably more to do with my For You page and the fact that I'm dark academia obsessed. The Alexandrian Society is the foremost secret society for magical academians. Those who earn a place amongst their ranks earn a life of wealth, power, and prestige, and only 6 are selected to be considered for initiation. Enter Libby, Nico, Raina, Perusa, Callum, and Tristan, each with their own unique abilities, each recruited by Atlas Blakely, who tell them they have 1 year to qualify, and only 5 of them will make it through. And so begins the fight to prove themselves amongst their rivals to survive the year ahead, and most of them will. Most of them. This really feels like it's gonna be such a fantastic novel. I've heard mixed things about it, unfortunately, but I'm still excited for it because I feel like dark academia being like the thriving genre right now, and hopefully will continue to be a thriving genre in the many years to come because I'm writing a dark academia novel and I hope it doesn't go out of style by the time I publish mine. It kind of reminds me a little bit, from premise alone, I will preface that, of Gideon the Ninth, the very first book where they're all in that, like, they're trying to figure out the necromancy stuff. I'm trying not to spoil. I'm really excited to read this and see what the hype is about. We then have the next Dark Academia book, which actually releases later this month, but I'm really excited to read it because it's set in alternate Wales, which I'm always on board for. And so we have A Study in Drowning by Ava Reid, following architecture student Effie, who has been haunted by the visions of the Fairy King since she was a child, only finding solace in the pages of the Anharad, Emrys Merthin's beloved epic about the girl who falls in love with the Fairy King only to kill him. And so when the opportunity presents itself to design the late author's house, Effie sees it as a bit of destiny. Hiraeth Manor is an impossible task, made even more difficult by a literature scholar who's determined to prove that Emrys Merthin is a fraud. But as the two investigate the reclusive author's legacy, they find dark forces, both mortal and magical, conspiring against them, and the truth may bring them both to ruin. I am really intrigued by the premise of this book, not only because it examines an epic tale that may or may not be real, and also may or may not be interfering with forces magical and non-magical, but I think there's just something about the way Ava Reid talks about this book on TikTok and Instagram that I find so enthralling. Like, the real romance of this book is through Effie and the Anharad. Like, it's her love of this book, and so I can't wait to read it. This is set in an alternative Wales. I've seen it go bad before in fiction, and so I'm holding my reservations till I actually read it. So we'll see what I think. I'm confident that I will like it. We then have another book that everyone has been getting me to read for the longest time, and one that I finally will be reading this autumn. It's one that I'm ashamed that I haven't read, and one that I know if I don't read by the end of this year that one of my friends is literally going to murder me. And so we have Legendborn by Tracy Dion. I'm really excited to read this. Like, this sounds so good. It's Arthurian, it's black, unapologetically black, and I don't know, Tracy Dion's just so awesome, and so I can't wait to read it. This basically follows Brie Matthews, who on her very first night on campus witnesses a demon attack and uncovers a secret society of Legendborn who actually deal with these monsters. And in turn, these Legendborn accidentally unlock a unique magic within Brie and also link link themselves to her mother's death. And so Bree infiltrates the secret society to learn more, only realizing that they're the descendants of King Arthur's knights who are preparing for an oncoming war. And so Bree must decide whether she's going to use her magic to take this society down or join them in the fight to come. And this really gives Arthurian epic vibes in the modern day. I'm really excited for that because as someone who loves Arthurian literature and is hopefully going to work on my own series of YA Arthurian stuff one day, this definitely feels right up my alley. To see so many people love it as well, I have no doubt that I will, and I just think it's going to be such an awesome read. We then have the final Dark Academia book that I'm going to be reading this autumn, and that is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This is the Illumicrate special edition that I absolutely love. Just look at that. It's so amazing. And through everything that I've learned about this book, I have no doubt that I'm gonna love it entirely. And so Ninth House follows Alex Stern, who is the unlikeliest member of Yale's freshman class, being offered a full scholarship after being the sole survivor of a horrific, unsolved multiple homicide. At this university, she's tasked with monitoring the activities of Yale's secret societies, the haunts of the future rich and powerful. But their occult activities are revealed to be much more sinister and extraordinary than anyone might have conceived. This gives Buffy the Vampire Slayer in college, so I think like seasons 4, might be season 3 onwards actually. I swear there was one where like a bunch of like frat men were trying to sacrifice a girl to a demon, and I'm excited for that because like I'm always intrigued by kind of secret societies within American institutions. I mean, we see it in The Secret History, and I think it's just so intriguing to see the way that not only Americans take secret societies for themselves, but then also like contrasting that with the way that British secret societies work. I think there's such like an intriguing difference there that would be very fun to analyze one day. I'm just excited to read Ninth House because I feel like part of like this new modern kind of dark academia that intersects with the magical and the mystical and the macabre, and I think it's so fun to see what new fresh things can come from the genre when you do that. Also, I just love everything Leigh Bardugo writes, so I think that's going to be great. And then we move on to my more horror picks, which I think is going to be quite fun. So the very first book is Chlorine by Jade Song. This one has been on like my anticipated reads for a while. I literally saw this in, I think it was London, and immediately I picked it up because I was like, I'm not letting this book out of my sight because I know it's the book that I want. Essentially, this follows Ren Yu, who is a swimmer, and if she's good at swimming, she'll go to a good university, she'll get good grades, she'll have a good life. But Ren, who grew up on the stories of the creatures of the deep, ones that feasted on the flesh of sailors, she wants nothing more than to be a mermaid. She dreams of the scent of chlorine, and she will do anything in order to achieve that goal. No matter the pain, no matter what anyone thinks, no matter how much blood she has to spill. And this basically kind of kickstarts a new genre of books for me, where I'm going to be calling it transformative or transmogrifying books, where humans seek to become something else, or humans are turning into something else. We see it with the next book that I'm going to be picking up. We see it with the book that came out quite recently called Shark Heart, which was about a fiance who's slowly turning into a great white shark. I don't know where this I guess it was people who are raised on animorphs, I guess. It just the genre of people transforming into animals or magical creatures. I just find it so fascinating. Like, what inspires them to write these kinds of stories, like transforming into a mermaid, turning into a dog, turning into a great white shark? I don't know, but one thing is for sure, I am going to read it and hopefully enjoy it. Yeah, Chlorine is so intriguing to me. It feels like a dark, sinister reverse Little Mermaid, and I'm fully on board for that. This is your cue to hydrate because I've been talking for a while, so my throat needs it. Yours probably does too. So, as I was saying, Nightbitch by Rachel Yonder is a story about a woman who's slowly turning into a dog. I don't think there's anything more I need to say about it apart from that. I saw the cover in foils when I was in Bristol and I fell in love with the look of this book. And then I read the blurb and I was like, okay, I'm on board. This is absurd. You need to have a kind of suspension of disbelief when you're reading these kinds of fiction. And I'm finding that with a bit of fantasy lately where I have to have a little bit of suspension of disbelief. And sometimes it's a bad thing. Sometimes it can be a good thing. Like if you have to scientifically explain why a woman is turning into a dog, we'll be here for an extra 300 pages. But if you believe that it's happening in a kind of fabulistic way, we're working. I think it's going to be one of those books that is quite polarizing to people. I think some people are going to love it, some people are going to hate it. From my quick browse on Goodreads, that does seem to be the case, but I am intrigued by it. We then have 2 books by the same author again that I do want to read, and the very first one is Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher. T. Kingfisher is an author that a few of my friends have read and have absolutely loved their books. And T. Kingfisher is one of those authors that I think writes speculative fiction really well, according to some of my friends, where they write like in different kind of spheres of speculative fiction, but does each one quite well. And so I'm really excited excited to read Nettle because from the synopsis, it's kind of like a dark version of Cinderella. So basically, after years of seeing her sisters suffer at the hands of an abusive prince, Mara decides that she's going to be the one to save them because no one else will. And so a grave witch offers Mara the tools that she needs to kill the prince if she can complete 3 impossible tasks. And so this is only the beginning of the story, as she's joined by that grave witch, a reluctant fairy godmother, a strapping former knight, and a chicken possessed by a demon. The 5 of them intend to free Mara's family and the kingdom that is suffering from the prince's tyrannous rule. This is quite a short book, and I've heard so many things about T. Kingfisher's writing, the way that she's able to really depict the horrors and the also fantastical aspects of things. And so I'm really looking forward to reading it, and I think it's just going to be so good. And the following book that I want to read from T. Kingfisher is The Hollow Places, following freshly divorced Kara, who becomes obsessed with her uncle's bunker back at home, discovering it holds portals to countless alternate realities. But these places are haunted by creatures who seem to be able to hear thoughts, and the more you fear them, the stronger they become. And so I feel like this is going to be a horror that I'm really going to love, because I love horrors that delve into alternate realities. I love fiction that delves into alternate realities anyway. The whole concept just sounds really intriguing to me, and so I'm really excited to read it and see where this goes. I think if I really love these two, I probably will read the rest of T. Kingfisher's bibliography, but it really depends on how I feel about these two. But I know these two are the ones that I'm drawn to the most right now. And then the final book that I want to read this autumn is 19 Claws and a Blackbeard by Augustina Bazterrica, the author of Tender is the Flesh. One of my favorite books of the year that I read it. I have absolutely forgotten what year I've read Tender is the Flesh. Everything has just blended into one these past 3 years, so who knows. I loved Tender is the Flesh, and so I'm really excited to read this short story collection from her. And according to the blurb, it is a breathtaking dive into human monstrousness through 19 wildly imaginative. I'm just excited for the way this short story collection is going to scare me, and it's going to be fun, so I can't wait. So yeah, those are all the books that I plan to read this autumn. I would love to know what books you plan to read this autumn as well. If you leave them in the comment section down below, that would be fantastic. And thank you so much today for joining me on my little ramble about all of the books that I want to read. I am just super excited to read all of these. Let me know if there's any of these you want me to cover in a video or in some future content. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and if you're new here, be sure to click that subscribe button so that you're notified whenever I upload next. I hear the subscription button only really works for the hottest ones, so you should probably try it out and see what happens. And I'll have all my other social medias in the description down below for you, so you can follow me on every single other platform. I am just really excited for the coming months ahead in terms of reading, in terms of video gaming, in terms of content. And so by the end of this fall, we'll finally answer the question of whether I will actually be able to read Mistborn. And so yeah, I guess until the next time, bye besties.